Hey, shalom, sisters and brothers. This is Sister Yiskaya, and we are examining life through a biblical perspective. Today, we're going to examine the three different kinds of people that you will encounter during the times of tribulation. As you may have seen, I'm doing a series of memoirs called the Memoirs of the Brokenhearted. And these memoirs are just a series of lessons that I've learned throughout the years from the various people that the Lord has sent into my life. Um, and many of these, well, not many, but some of these people still remain today. And many of these people have just come and gone, but they have made quite an impact in my life, and I hope that I can make an impact in yours. Life through a biblical perspective. So, examining tribulation and times of pain and heartache through a biblical perspective, the scripture gives us a glimpse of how one should react when something terrible happens and how not to react. Now, the world also gives us a glimpse of how one should react. And we're going to compare the way the scriptures explains tribulation and our reaction to the different ways the world explains how we should react during tribulation, okay? And when tribulation comes, I know that oftentimes it's very difficult to think. Okay, we can't even think when something very enormous comes our way unexpectedly. But we must always remember that every good gift and every perfect gift comes from above. It comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variableness, neither any shadow of turning. And the Lord knows the thoughts that He has towards us. Those thoughts are of peace and not of sorrow. Okay, they're always to bring us to an expected end. So the scripture makes it plain that bad things happen to good people too, as well as to the wicked, like in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 8 and 14. It lets us know that King Solomon saw that there was a vanity that was being done upon the earth, that there be just men unto whom it happens according to the work of the wicked. Again, there be wicked men to whom it happens according to the work of the righteous. And King Solomon said in himself, this is vanity. In Ecclesiastes 9 and 11, King Solomon also makes it clear that time and chance happens to us all. So we mustn't assume that because one is going through trials and tribulations that they've done something wrong, because that's the first thing people do. They start backbiting, they start talking, they start saying, oh, because they're like this, that, and all these things, that these things are happening to that person, when in fact, sometimes things are just happening by time and chance to either the righteous or to the wicked. And saints of the Most High God, you know when you're in sin. We have to, when things happen to us, you guys, we got to start checking ourselves, okay? We got to be like David. We got to be asking God to try our hearts and our kidneys. Check our inward parts, Lord. Father, see if there be any iniquity within us. Help us, Most High. What have we done to have endured such and such a trial? We got to begin to consciously inspect ourselves spiritually through Yeshua Jesus Christ, who is the author and the finisher of our faith. To help us to gain victory when we have trial and tribulation, we're going to examine 3 different kinds of people, okay, through a biblical perspective today. The first kind is going to be Job and his wife. Okay, the second kind is going to be Paul and Silas and the children of Israel. And the third kind of people is going to be King Asa in the book of Chronicles. Okay, sometimes our grief, okay, i.e., you got terrible things that happen to all of us, like you know, the death of a loved one, divorce, okay, sickness and disease. Those are 3 of the most terrible things that come upon a human being in this life. Okay, death, divorce, and sickness or disease. All right, we tend to forget the honor and glory that is due unto the Lord. You hear people blaming God, cursing God even, or just plain ignoring God in their times of tribulation. All right, and we see this happening in movies like The Truman Show, if you've ever watched The Truman Show with Tom Hanks. So there's a scene in this movie when he's on a boat, and on this boat he is ranting and raving and cursing at the one whom he thinks is God. Okay, likewise, in the movie Into the Wild with Emil Hirsch, that's another great movie that I came across in my lifetime. And the young man, you know, he decides to put away college, you know, leave his entire family and go off on a adventure where he enters into the wild and he gives all of his money away, and he just decides to live amongst, you know, the trees and the shrubs and the animals and the people that have given up society, okay, which is a wonderful way to live. But in his adventure, he finds himself in a place where he eats a poisonous plant. And instead of seeking the face of God in humility, he immediately begins to curse God. And so he ended up dying in that movie. All right. So the first kind of person we're going to look at is Job and his wife. And although in his trial, Job never brought a slanderous word against the Most High. In fact, instead of cursing the Lord, Job decided to begin to curse himself and his birth. And he began to say, oh, it would have been better for me if I had never been born than to have endured this very terrible thing that has come upon him. Whereas his wife, okay, began to tell Job, Job, you're foolish in that you keep cursing yourself. Why don't you just curse God and die? Okay? Which is what these movies show us how to do. All right? Time after time again, I've seen movies where, someone has died and the mother stands up and she begins to just hoop and holler and, come against the Lord. And guys, we got to understand that everything that happens to us is for a reason. Okay? We may not be able to see the good in that thing right away. Okay? But, our trials and our tribulations is what gets us to another level in our life, okay? And we have to learn how to use the things that happen to us as a stepping stone to get to that next place in our life above that place where we're at right now, okay? We don't want our trials and tribulations to to push us down and to hold us and to hinder us from moving forward in life, okay? And from growing and from becoming better and great and stronger, okay? Into a very weak and depressed state, which a lot of people do. And in many movies we see that people are depressed, they're unable to move forward, they turn to alcoholism, drugs, murder, and terrible ways of life. So they turn to Satan instead of turning to God, or instead of seeking, a solution from the one who has all answers. If you don't know God, just seek a solution from the one who knows all answers and begin to pray like that. If there is a God, if you are real, I know that you know all things. This is happening to me. I don't know why. Help me. Show me what is going on. Okay, the second kind of person that I want to look at is the Apostle Paul. Okay, and in his trial and tribulations, the Apostle Paul was stoned, he was chased, he was thrown into prison, and anytime anything ever happened to him, he immediately began to praise and worship the Lord. And God sent angels to let this man out of prison. Peter was put in jail, and he began to praise and worship the Lord in his tribulation. And God sent angels to open up the prison doors and to let Peter out of prison. And we see these kinds of things happening over and over again. So in our trial, in our tribulation, in our times of trouble, we got to understand that, okay, things look really bad right now, okay? But in the next second, y'all, in the blink of an eye, that terrible situation might begin to look better, okay? And there's an old saying by Lao Tzu, okay? An old Chinese farmer was out in his field, and one day his horse ran away, okay? And the neighbors, they came around and they began to tell him, oh, this is a terrible thing that has happened. Oh, no, we're so sorry that your horse ran away. And the old man said, maybe. Then the next day, the horse came back with 4 other horses. And the entire neighborhood came around and, they began to, praise him and say, oh, wow, this is a wonderful thing. Your horse just ran away and now you didn't have any and now you have 5. What a wonderful thing that has occurred. And the old man said, maybe. Then the next day, his eldest son tried to break one of the horses, and he actually broke his leg, and the entire neighborhood came around to commemorate the situation. Oh, this is a terrible thing. Your son, he broke his leg. Oh, no, this is horrible. And the old farmer said, maybe.